Hey, how are you? Good. That's your area of expertise. You know, career. That part of well, Steve will be good for me, but what? So hang on it. Hey, tell me something. Yes. Seems like there were a couple things. Honey mustard? I have some mushrooms. You understand? Where at? Was it like in the fridge? I'm talking to you. Hey, would it have been from Tasha's?
All right, well, hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Coach Connection.
Well,
Go ahead.
is your audio normal? Mine's choppy.
I can hear you okay. Are you? But you're not hearing me all right?
Let me go into my my audio mechanical center. The sound is fine. How's everybody?
It was choppy for me too. So
Huh, strange.
Oh, mine is choppy then?
yeah, it was.
Little. Mhm.
You were just when you first spoke, but it seems to be okay now, at least what I'm receiving.
Okay, good deal. Well, let's go ahead and start with introductions, and then we'll let Justine, we'll let you be our last introduction, Justine, and then we can go ahead and get started with our topic for today. I'll start. I think most of you all know me by now, but I'm Conrad. I'm the coaching coordinator here at Love Inc. And then we'll also have Kelly. She'll be right next to me. She's our extra mile coordinator. And then I believe that Jane should also be sitting in with us as well. We might have a couple others that pop in too. So that's us here at Love Inc. And we'll start with whoever else wants to go next.
I'm Debbie Karwoski. I've been a variety of volunteers with Love Inc., but my latest effort has been with the Jobs for Life program, which is on hold right now because of the virus.
I'm Teresa Schaefer. I've been let's see, I'm an extra mile coach now. I just started with that. I haven't started meeting with my girl yet, but I was can't remember what I was. A life coach, I guess I don't know, before. So that's all.
Hi, I'm Marcy Almond. I'm an extra mile coach, and I just finished up with my first coachee, and we had a great time. So happy to be here.
I'm Tammy Bennis. I'm a CPA. I help with a lot of the participants' tax returns, trying to help them get caught up, and just kind of a resource for any of you guys when you have questions. Kelly emails me a lot for you all with different questions.
I'm Carolyn Roof, and I have been a life coach in the past and just coming back to help out if needed. And so I'm happy to join you first today.
I'm Janelle Elmore. I'm an extra mile coach. I've had 3 coachees and waiting for the next one.
I'm Dave Nisley. I'm pretty much new to Love Inc. and had training for the extra mile. Haven't started that yet, and see what I could learn.
I'm Mary Clark, and I'm doing life coaching right now, and I've done extra mile in the past also, and Jobs for Life.
I'm Ben Scott. I'm an intern at Love Inc. this summer, and I was invited to sit in and just learn more about it, housing, I guess.
Ben, are you also a prince?
Must be a prince.
You must be a prince.
Sorry, this was some private. I'll change.
Well, you look like a prince to me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dana Frank. I go to church at the Crossing, and I work with Shelley on the Mercy Ministry with Love Inc. And the Crossing has just started the 5th and 6th transitional, extra mile transitional house. And so I'm working with Kelly and Shelley on getting just the right families in there. I've been through extra mile training just recently, but I haven't been matched up with anyone.
Hi, I'm Laura Verkamp, and I'm new to Love Inc. I'm going to start doing side-by-side career coaching. I'm excited to get back in the field. I've taken a few years off, but I have a master's in career counseling and primarily worked with college students, so I'm excited to learn a different population and help where I can.
Am I up? Hi, I'm Tasha Fisher, and I am the Path Forward Program Coordinator at Love Inc. Appreciate all you guys and what you do with our clients. It makes such a difference in their lives. And, you know, I'm at the end of the road, so I get to, well, I'm at the beginning, so they do their assessment with me, and then or with Stephanie, or with Christina, and then they get referred over to the Extra Mile program if they seem to be a good fit. So we get to see them kind of like at the beginning, and then we get to, you know, kind of be there for them for support like throughout their time in Extra Mile. And if they need anything, they come to us. And then we get to see them at the end, and the end result is beautiful compared to what they came in at. So thanks you guys for all that you do for Love Inc. and our clients.
Hi, I'm Linda Carl, and I'm an Extra Mile coach. I haven't had a client for a while, so I'm looking forward to getting started again.
Hi, I'm Julie Walker, and I'm a part-time coordinator several years ago, and now I serve as a community liaison, kind of meeting with groups in the community and other agencies and trying to pool resources, and so that's what I do now. Also been an Extra Mile coach too.
Hey, Wendy, do you want to say anything?
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm new to Love Inc. and I just got my first 2 clients a few days ago, and I'm happy to be here.
And I'm Kelly. I'm the Extra Mile Coordinator, and I'm so appreciative of all of you guys being here today and doing your work throughout the week that you do, and glad to hear of people who are interested in starting again or beginning again, or beginning anew. Thanks so much.
I think there's one other person that we have as a caller on the line. I just have the phone number, so I don't know who you are, but welcome. And then we'll go ahead and let Justine go ahead and share a little bit about herself. But what I wanted to say first before she begins is that she came to us really right around the time I started back in February, was interested as a volunteer, and had mentioned that she had some experience with HR and with resume work. And so far, I think we've sent you probably 6 or 8 different people for resumes and for help with interviewing. And everybody that she's worked with has at least gotten an interview. I think all but one of those has had a job offer. So that's been just some great success that Justine's seen in a very tough environment right now for job searching. But I was just really impressed with how she was able to really just kind of identify, looking at a job description, giving clients some great questions to ask, reminding them of what their kind of the process and how they can follow up, and even helping draw out a lot of the skills and strengths that our clients have that they may not be aware of. That was something that was really powerful as I saw her interacting with some of our clients. Many of our clients sometimes don't even really know what they bring to the table. They've had a lot of rejection. They've had some tough history in their past, and she's been really great about drawing out their strengths, not glossing over things, but really helping them to see what they bring to the table and the value that they have. And so I think that's something that's been really powerful as well. So Justine, we're glad to have you share, and we're certainly glad to have you as part of our coaching team as well as one of our own. So I'll go ahead and let you take over from here.
All right. Well, this is really good news to have so many friends around the table. Conrad said we don't need where or what, but we need more help with the how. And I'd say all of us in this group have lots of life experience, casework we can share and learn from, all of us. I'm pretty new to this population, and I'm certainly new Am I muted? Am I muted, you guys? I don't know.
You're unmuted now. You were briefly muted,
Oh,
but you're
okay.
good now.
I was just talking about the wealth of experience we have in this group. And so I'm new to this population. Sounds like a lot of you aren't. And I'm new to this uncertain job market. All of us are. So we can put our heads together today and share the wealth, I think. This will be more of a discussion rather than a talk. If each of you could be sure you have this copy of the side-by-side manual, it is really good. And we're going to be referring to that so you can write all over it on the pages we're going to be talking about. If you can grab it, please. You can highlight things. I thought of 5 topics we could talk about today, and then we're going to have time to discuss and maybe even share cases. I thought that'd be very helpful. Can you still hear me? I have to see the yellow box, don't I, to be heard?
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you.
Okay, good. First would be considerations in today's COVID employment scene. Second, today's Love Incorporated clientele. What are the advantages and some of the challenges? Third, resumes today. Fourth, today's employment etiquette and interviewing. And fifth, follow-up techniques in today's market. Those are 5 topics I thought that might be helpful. And then when we have time left, which we will, let's do a case sharing or maybe difficult situations or challenges you feel you've had. Does that sound good? Good plan? Okay, so the first topic is today's COVID employment scene. What are some considerations that make employment difficult today? Well, there's more risk for everybody. There's mutual fears, right? The employee, the employer. So we're automatically all on eggshells. This is different. How about closures, furloughs, the fragility of business, the fragility of the staff? This will all impact your applicant. How about the roller coaster of employer status? So not just the employee, but the employer is going through a roller coaster of not knowing, not being able to predict. Economic insecurities. How about new hygiene rules? No handshakes. When do you wear a mask? Always? Sometimes? Feet, distancing. How about government phases? Reopening, lockdown, phase 1, 2, 3, 4. This all impacts recruiting, hiring, training. The time will be extended on some of these. Another factor would be their Twitter, Facebook, misinformation, incorrect information, even on websites about jobs. Perhaps too much information. That can be overwhelming. How about the current standards of etiquette in our society? Think that might impact an interview? Or how about the colloquial language that people use today? You think we could be doing some training on the best words not to use? Or perhaps avoiding certain phrases? So language sensitivity. How about application limitations? Online applications only? Have you all functioned in that kind of world? Online only. Zoom interview only. That's going to take a lot more training for me, for everybody. How about phone? Phone comfort, phone confidence. Another factor we could be training on. How about reverse incentives? How about knowing you're going to get a check? It's a reverse incentive. I'm going to get $1,200 in about a month, whether I work or not. That's a factor. Checks they feel entitled to, expected, earned or not earned. How about the complications with their own benefits that they live on, Social Security or other income that's going to complicate things? And how do you help them? You already do. How do you help them get through that maze? So those are some of the scenes happening today in the COVID employment market. I'm sure you've noticed more. somebody made a comment when we just opened up about, I'd like to do that, but it's the COVID factor and I can't do it right now. I think it was, who was it, Mary? So lots of things that are hitting our applicants that we did not have to deal with. So it's hard to know how to train them if we don't even have the background skills. So we're going to be learning with them, aren't we? Second topic is today's love clientele. We have challenges for them and they do have advantages. What are some considerations of your population that you've noticed? Some of you have had 5 candidates, some of you have had many applicants. Debbie, the intake and the outgo specialist, she has an amazing advantage. And it's so beautiful to hear that what she sees going out the door. I mean, that made me cry. So that's awesome. That's because of all of you. What are some considerations of their challenges? They're in lifestyle chaos. We all know that. They're in transition. We all know that. They probably have higher stress than you and me. Imagine that. We all know that. They could be confused, as Conrad said, about their own skill set, about the best job fit. I worked as a matchmaker once at a dating service. I couldn't believe how wrong people, how wrong they seemed to pick the people that they thought were ideal for them. It was the most educational experience I've ever had in matching. How about even their own identity? It's going to be confused. They're in chaos and trauma. So their identity is a little murky, isn't it? So you'll be coaching them to refine their identity. History of instability. How does that impact a resume or an interview? Length of stay. Permanent address. We take that for granted. Very hard to find, very hard to dig up, and what does it reflect? So we'll be helping them with that. How about work experience all over the board? Does that help you? Some jobs. Does it hurt? A lot of jobs. How about the dearth of long-term or strong references? I've been in HR. That is one of the most impactful factors right there, is a dearth or a paucity of strong either character or work references. I actually had a client already here in Columbia that couldn't think of one. Mature person has been on this earth 45, 50 years, couldn't give me one reference. Not even church, which you're not supposed to use, right? He finally gave me his wife and his daughter. And we had to work with that. It's very unusual, but very, very critical. Whether it be volunteer, whether it be a neighbor, whether it be somebody that knows them over time, they have to find. How about transportation handicaps? We all know about that. Intact car, bus route handiness. How about daycare? The complication of the daycare, drop off, pickup, and payment. Emotional liabilities we learned about last month in our in-service. And we learned all about stress and coping and mannerisms and perhaps differences during the application process, how they're coping. How about a fear of serious responsibility? They've been fine, right? Surviving in chaos, pretty scary maybe. I know that's not something thought about often, but it is a factor. How about just your nerves post-trauma or during trauma, your nerve level? She talked a lot about breathing and about refocusing and about other mental coping skills. That's so important. Some people are naturally dependent on their job coach. Some people are naturally repellent. Imagine that. They're rebellious, even though you're trying to help them. Possible. I've already had both. How about the factor of low funds while you're applying? Low access to technology. Phone, printer, stamps. We take all this for granted, but not necessarily available to our candidates. Trust issues. Have they ever been bonded? That's huge. That's fantastic. They've been a housekeeper. They've been bonded, hopefully. Something to put on a resume. Proof of trust. And finally, I thought I'd end with post-trauma candidates, which we learned last month. They need to tell their story. I'm a counselor. I need to listen to their story. You process your story over and over, don't you? To work it out. You tell a lot of people your story because that's part of the grief and the resolution process. But it's not part of the interview process. And I think naturally, a lot of these folks say, you know, watch Shark Tank. Who get the deals? The people that cry, right? You tell their personal story because it grabs your heart. But it's not professional. It's not showing they've got their boundaries done. And it's not showing that they're ready to work. So you work with the story. But too much information is a risk with these folks and can be a sign of unreadiness. Background check. Local, state, national, legal. There's all kinds of background checks. Some take overnight, some take 2 weeks. My best advice to applicants is to tell the truth and tell it early. So there's no surprises. I've already had a candidate here who gave me a list. She said, now, Justine, they are waiting for my background check. And I said, anything to worry about? Oh, nothing to worry about. And she listed all the things that she knew were on it. She was probably right. There were no felonies. I said, I hope you told your interviewer that, your hiring person that. Oh, I did. Excellent, excellent. No surprises. Be upfront and honest, and where the status is on those listings. Credit history. Usually they have borderline or low credit, no established credit. Seems like jobs are looking at your credit history now. Online history, critical. They can go to Facebook. They can go to any online conversation almost. So as soon as you have a candidate, you say, would you mind cleaning up your blogs, your blogs and your comments and your rants, okay? Because we need to get a job. So that's one of the hygiene things that I emphasize. Have you done an inventory of your trail? Let's do a hygiene check on that. Okay, so I don't mean to scare you, but so let's go into the advantages of this population because they have terrific advantages. They can. Their characteristics. They can be more resilient than most. Why? They've survived. They can be more persistent than most. Why? They had to be. They can have more flexibility than most. They're used to change. Some are dependent on change. They can be addicted to change. That's another work risk. But they're flexible usually. And I'm not saying there aren't rigid, scared folks. I'm just giving you potential advantages. Another one is worldliness. They've been exposed to the best and the worst, haven't they? So street smarts can be off the wall, awesome, way beyond mine. Well, that's functional, that's a skill. And finally, spiritual reserves. Some develop very strong spiritual muscles. You've got to keep those. Those are gold. Prayer, relying on God, hope, knowing that there is a purpose. Jeremiah, and they know they got a purpose. You just got to find it, but they know they got a purpose. I mean, this is huge. And a lot of them have this spiritual reserve. Transferable skills. Some of them are pretty savvy communication-wise. Interpersonal relationships. They know to treat different people differently, depending on where you are in the environment or what you need. Organizing. They're pretty good about details. What did Gloria Steinem say? The subordinate class always has to be more astute about noticing details in the environment because they're the subordinate class. They got to be better so they can survive. So they're very good at details, at noticing things. Technology. They can be an ace. They don't have to own anything today and they can be an ace in technology, right? Problem solving. They've coped somehow. Solved very difficult situations already. Some are pretty good in crisis situations. They don't overreact always. They've been through a little bit. They've had practice. And finally, they have a worldview that can either be savvy or kind of a victim stance. Both of those can work in certain situations. I always call it, they got the chip factor or the charm factor. And so their worldview can really be worked with because usually there's wisdom behind it, whatever they've picked to face the world with. There's wisdom in it for them at this time and how they've coped. Anyone else? Can you add some more strengths and characteristics you've noticed in your population? Because I think they're rich with them. We just have to mine them, as Conrad said. Anybody want to bring up some more things they've noticed or talents? Okay, let's go to number 3, resumes today. In this fluid and unpredictable market, resumes need to be particularly succinct, specific, reflect work ethic in the motivation to work, motivation to know the employer, because look how easy it is to research today. They can go to the library, they can go wherever they can get access to the internet, and they can put in that company. They can see the hierarchy, they can see their staff, sometimes they can see the supervisors' names. No excuse not to customize a resume and use names. Page 21, you've got your manual. Go to page 21, and it goes over. You all are familiar with the 3 types of resumes: chronological, targeted, and functional. I'm going to remind you that they recommend a certain font. I think that's important because a lot of these young people love to get fancy schmancy on their fonts. So highlight that. They recommend, on page 31, they recommend 4 different fonts that are professionally expected. So I would stick to those. That's on page 41, the fonts. The resume must be easy to read and scan. I mean, this must be even more true online, right, than on your desk, because look how blinded you can get by 300 resumes or 300 apps. It needs to be clean, clear, bold. People are also going crazy on bullet points. They get really tired of bullet points. They can be overdone. So be careful of the bullet points, overdoing it, and be careful what you're listing. If it's not a real, purposeful bullet point, don't use a bullet point for that. What I do with resumes sometimes is I just have somebody look at it cold, don't even read it. Look at this piece of paper, tell me, is it inviting to you to look at? So they could ask a friend, look at this, would you read it? How it's arranged, the imagery, the size, the color, how easy it is, how friendly it is. Okay, page 32. We're going to talk about the cover letter a little minute here because that's critical, I think, even today. Page 32 to 35 goes over the cover letter. On page 32, underline the second bullet point, demonstrate your knowledge of an organization. Remember what I just said about homework. There's no excuse. To give you an example, I had a gentleman who's never done a resume in his life. He did not research. He had an interview the next morning at 9 o'clock. He never researched the company. Hadn't had a job in 20 years. So I said, it's so easy. I pulled it up just to glance at the company. I happened to notice there are no other men there. There's a director, but no men on the staff. So I coached him and I said, one of the assets you can push with yourself is the fact that you're a masculine role model. You're a man. Okay, that's a very simple idea, but it's something I gleaned from 5 seconds looking up that particular employer. And of course, he brought it in the interview and it helped. They even I guess they even told him it was one of the reasons he was hired. I'm not sure about that, but. And then also line, bullet point, way down under, address it to a specific person. In the parentheses, it says, if you don't know who that is, use hiring manager. Go further. Get a name. Get a name. Everything has to be so much more custom. Call the office. The little receptionist will tell you the hiring manager's name. They will tell you. So there's no excuse. Go to Google, call the office, you can get a name. If it's really impossible, I'll go for the hiring manager. But really, it's so much more impressive and powerful if you care enough to do that little bit of homework. Okay, so research is a must. Back to page 21. Flipping you around to keep you awake. Page 21 is about the arrangement of the resume. One thing I would add to this list, you're starting with personal data, it says. You go to, next is qualifications / summary of skills. I particularly like summary of skills at the bottom of the resume because it's the last thing they see and it's the last thing they're going to remember. But you can put it anywhere. I just happen to like it on the bottom. But what I would add to this list, which I feel is critical, especially today with the competition, is objective. What is the person's objective? You can look at their resume and not have a clue. You can even talk to them and not have a clue what they find priorities in their job hunt. So I would add objective to the top of the resume after the personal information. It simplifies the HR job. It's a nutshell of what the applicant wants. It's only 1 or 2 sentences, whether it's long-term, short-term goals. For instance, let me give you an example. I had a candidate, an applicant, who thought she only wanted a coffee job. How important do you think it was to put in that objective? She only wants part-time. Oh my gosh, employers love that. No benefits? It's fantastic. Somebody who wants part-time, she doesn't even have a goal of full-time. She wants part-time. She loves early morning. My goal is to find a job as a coffee barista with only 15 to 20 hours, and I really love early mornings. She's just improved her profile, 200%, because most people don't want any of those.
Justine, I have a question about that.
Oh, yes.
Hi, can you hear? Yeah, so objectives were like a huge thing that we were like, don't do them, you know?
Yeah.
But I love your point. Yeah, I love your point. But are you finding a lot of people are submitting a resume for multiple jobs, or are they applying for one job? Because I would tell them to, like you were saying, tailor that sentence or two to the job you're going after. It's almost like a mini cover letter.
Yeah. They want to do a generic resume and use it for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
we don't want them to do that.
It's not giving you any advantage because they get 1,000 online, and I'll go even further than that. I think they should hand carry it in there. There's a piece of paper on the top of the desk.
Yeah.
Got to get rid of it. They got to look at it. They just talked to somebody who's going to say, did you see that lady who dropped by? All kinds of reasons to go physically, but it's hard to convince them. But
yeah,
you know, if they're super busy, they don't even have time to customize a cover letter and resume. You know, they're overwhelmed. Sure, generic. Do a generic objective even. Yeah, that's not a problem. But
great.
It just gives you that edge if you can be really customized about it.
When I used to preview applicants for positions at my former job, I would kind of do that for my boss. I was always really irritated by the generic ones who hadn't taken the time to address our organization.
Yep. They think if he can't take 2 minutes to show a little interest in my company, what kind of employee am I getting out of this deal? You know, so you're exactly right. That's why I always say, if you dress up, go in, bother to make a trip, hand carry a resume in, that's just giving you, 200% of credibility, because you give enough time, you dress up, You spend the hour it takes to get over there, and you hand over paper copy, which, you know, nobody has anymore. Same argument. So they're always thinking of how much does this employee really want to come, and how dedicated and loyal would they really be, or am I just another generic job? She's exactly right. And just think how you'd feel. I always tell the applicant, I want you to imagine you are the hiring person. What do you think? What are you looking for? I want you to just really try to imagine their priorities. They don't want somebody there 5 minutes early. They want somebody there 15 minutes early. What does that show? You got time to take off your coat, go to the bathroom, and actually find your chair. So, Conrad, were you going to say something?
I'm just going to speak to you hear me?
Keep talking.
Okay, there are several of our clients that are applying for jobs through Indeed, and in fact, I'd say a lot of them are, and they're relying on that as a resume. One of the things that I try to do is get that downloaded off of Indeed so that we can create a personalized resume for them, so that they're not relying on that. Because I haven't seen a whole lot of success from anybody that's applying directly through Indeed, but it seems like that's what's most popular for people.
Yes. It's very convenient, very easy, very low output. And we talked about cultural considerations. Everybody wants easy, right? And not a lot of maintenance or input. So that's the easiest way to go. But if we could teach them that the response level is so low in doing that mode or taking that choice, that would be convincing. But that's great if you can download it and kind of teach them to, let's make it for this particular job. I mean, what job are you looking at? Let's write it to them. It's a love letter to them. Employment, go down to employment paragraph. HR loves data. They love data. They love measurements. They love numbers. They love percent. Anytime anybody can say, you know, I increased the morale of our truck drivers, you know, by 50%, or I increased the outgo of that factory machine, or anytime you can say anything measurable, it is a huge impression. Okay, so remember that, underline that, that's in there. I would never include real short-term jobs under employment unless they're really, really bare employment-wise. I wouldn't put super short-term. And I wouldn't put any jobs that they've had a negative experience on, because they might slip and talk about it, because a reference would be negative, because it's not positive and it's not part of their experience if it was negative and now negated by their own judgment. So I wouldn't put hugely negative jobs on there. Now, if you don't have a lot, you have a DARF, you've got to mine whatever you got, including volunteer work. Under education, you usually need to state high school diploma or GED. I mean, everybody, you need to put that they've got either one. You don't have to put a year on any education. You don't have to put any year. I would try to mine them for any certificate, any license, any volunteer training, literacy, anything, food pantry work, any training course they've had. I would mine them for, I got one lady, she said, yes, I'm a 20-year foster care trainer. She trained and she took foster care. I mean, that's pretty huge skill set there, be a foster parent. So really emphasize that. If they don't have a lot of education or anything past high school, just try to mine that. Now, I did have one candidate that had probably 8 colleges that he had listed. No. And when we condensed it down, and I said, yeah, it's not really a great impression that you went to 8 places and took a couple courses and changed your major every time, never getting a degree from any of them. He was quite offended that I wouldn't include all the colleges. But we had to talk about the impression of that versus maybe 3 strong ones he went to and what he studied there. So you might have to work with them on that. Down at the bottom, references. I know traditionally we do not include references ever. We always say, please ask, they will be available upon request, or let me know if you need any. Well, you know, this particular population, I would think it would be better to include any if you've got them, especially if they have a sketchy work pattern, no legitimate history. They can be work references, they can be character references. The longer time they're known, the better. They can put known them 10 years. That's awesome. If they have no boss reference, you guys know this, they can use a coworker. I've even had a candidate use a customer. I would love this person and could describe the way he works. They recommend no pastors or religious people for references, religious mentors, teachers, etc. You guys all know why, because they're so sweet and they all say nice things. That's why. They're compassionate and they're positive viewers. So that's why they recommend no one, unless of course they're in a religious job. Okay, the 4th point we were going into was today's employment etiquette and interviewing. You can imagine today the changes in the scene. Very different than the traditional model of interviewing and etiquette, isn't it? Today, it's more edgy. Both sides of the equation are a little insecure, aren't they? A little unsure. Page 42 to 43. Let's review what it said. I think she talked about this last month on the breathing and the preparation before an interview. 42 to 43 I have. Yeah, it's really good. So I recommend the deep breathing, and she all kind of taught us that, and she also sent out handouts. That was excellent last time to teach people simple breathing techniques. I believe, since Love Inc. is a Christian organization, I believe we can say, here's an idea for a prayer. You want to pray together? Put your nerves and put all your anxieties and put all your lack of control in God's hands. And let's pray for him to take over right now for your interview and for him to bless you with confidence. And I mean, you just pray with him, because that's our role modeling. That's what we believe, and it gives them hope. So I believe we can do that. It's private, it's nonprofit, it's Christian. You can even say, do you mind? In case they're offended. But I believe that should be part of the breathing and the preparation for any interview. Oh, by the way, before we talk about the interview, if they never get a call back or email back or any appointment or anything, and they're very interested in this particular position, I would definitely have them drop by physically, in person, with a copy of their resume and cover letter, because it's impressive, takes time to dress up and make it there. They get a feel for the company. They might get a name of a receptionist. They get a sense of morale. They're either accepted with hospitality or not. So perhaps fear-based, perhaps confident, depends. But there's huge advantages. If you never hear and they're very motivated for that position, I would definitely have them go and drop off their paperwork and say, by the way, is there anybody on staff right now that knows about this job that would have a few minutes to talk with me, to visit with me? Doesn't hurt to ask. Doesn't hurt to ask. So that's what I recommend if they've never heard anything, no feedback, no, because a lot of places, I guess, don't even send rejections anymore. They don't even give you the courtesy of, sorry, we filled it, or sorry, we're not going to talk to you, or sorry, we've given it to someone else. So sometimes they never know. Okay, so we talked about focus, prayer, deep breathing. For the appointment, underline where it says, please arrive 5 minutes early, preferably 10, underline 15, circle 15. Especially with, with young folks, and I'm speaking of my kids. 15 minutes early. It gives you enough time to breathe, to get to the bathroom, to get your orientation. And there's huge advantages for sitting in the lobby waiting for your interview. Look at the reading material, see how the staff treats each other in the office. All kinds of advantages, how they look at you as an applicant passing by. So you can read a lot and learn a lot by just getting there early, and they'll be impressed that you've got great work ethic. You can also get the receptionist's name and send an extra thank you note to her when you're done. The advantages of a hand-delivered resume, of course, is the paper does end up on the top of the desk. People that greeted you will definitely relay the word, because they always do. And you've made contact with that company. And think about how rare it would be today. Everybody's online, right? So I had the problem with one candidate who only wanted a nursing home last month, all right? Now, can she go in? No. So we talked about that. Well, how could we handle that? You want to make a personal presence, but they're not going to open the door. We worked it out. She visited a couple. She wasn't allowed in, but she was allowed to drop off her resume. So never impossible. Okay, we're talking about personal appearance. Critical. That's in the middle of the page on page 42. Remind people that the first impression is not just appearance, it's behavior. Their behavior reflects self-respect and respect of others. They can reflect respect out of their attire, what they're wearing. And I can tell you, with my own kids, it's very hard to teach. What is respectful attire in today's culture? Very difficult to teach today because the standards are very different. If you went around and asked job applicants, what does modest attire mean? You won't believe what you'd learn. So this might be a case where you need to define it, educate them on what does modest attire mean in the workplace. It's nothing malicious on their part. It's just a cultural standard that's lower. So in order for them to reflect professionalism and readiness, they've got to be above the board. So I tell my kids, you've got to stand out, not melt in. Melt in, they'll ignore you. Stand out. So cultural modest attire versus workplace modest attire, probably. Next is hygiene. Okay, there's notes here about shaving, teeth, shoes, hair. Don't forget fingernails. Clean fingernails. So hygiene, you might need to review a little bit about hygiene, especially these folks are on the run. They don't even have time to wash their hands or shave. So just reviewing it. Oh yeah, they've got a few more important things going on in their life. So just reviewing hygiene. Remember those fingernails. Get that toothpick and clean those fingernails. Take a rag and wipe off those shoes or get the scuffs off the tennis shoes. Make sure your hair's clean, combed. I know these sound like basics. And second hygiene factor is the one I talked about in the beginning. Have you cleaned up your Facebook? Any kind of blog spots, any kind of place you go online. Employers can do anything that's open to the public. And my son, a computer geek, says, Mom, they can get to anything if they want to. So cut the comments, cut the selfies, cut the inappropriate stuff on your sites. Maybe you're on match.com or whatever, so it's a little different emphasis. So they forget to do this, but it's got to do it, especially for some of the more important jobs. Okay, etiquette. Etiquette by cell phone. What's cell phone etiquette? That's different, isn't it? Do you think most of your candidates really want to take their phone and put it out of sight and turn it off? It's not automatic, is it? No. So remind them, turn it off, put it in your pocket, out of sight. Employer doesn't even want to see it. That's a distraction to just know it's there in their hand or sticking out of their pocket or whatever. Eye contact is still critical, and especially if you're working with refugees or immigrants, this is a really important lesson. It is not disrespectful to look in the eyes, to look people in the eye. It could be a foreign concept to some of them. So let them know that is respectful in an interview situation. Speak up and speak slowly and use a respectful vocabulary. So many words are considered okay now. You might even highlight some. This B word really isn't appropriate during any interview session. You know, even if you're talking about a coworker or whatever, you think you're funny, don't even use it. So respectful vocabulary, just the basics. In an interview, I recommend short answers. Don't elaborate unless they ask you. So this might tie it back in with they really have a yearn to tell their story, but they're going to tell themselves, I got to do short answer unless the boss asks me to elaborate. And then I've got the freedom to go a little bit longer. Anyone else have ideas on that one? Because that's really critical during the interview.
I found that it's helpful to practice phone calls and to practice interviews.
Yep. And especially if they don't get any feedback calls, they call, maybe they're never called back. You either got to look at their resume or you got to rehearse with them because something's tripping up, right? It's either their mannerisms, their speech pattern, their words, something, it looks amiss on the resume. So she's exactly right. Rehearsing, you can rehearse on the phone. I've done this already. I'm the employer. I'm the coffee barista, and I need somebody, Johnny on her feet, who's not afraid of a long list of syrups, who loves impatient people waiting for their coffee. So you can rehearse on the phone really easily, and you can critique it immediately with speed, vocabulary, enunciating words. So rehearsal is really good.
Justine?
Yes.
This is Nancy, and I wanted to go back a minute because when we were hiring CNAs at the Veterans Home and nurses, when you go in and drop your things off, and they might ask you to write, particularly now with COVID when you don't want to be touching pens.
Right.
You would be amazed the number of professional people with CNAs or nursing license who don't have a pen. And our comment was, why would we want to hire a nurse or a CNA who has to document when they don't even have a pen, when they're intentionally coming to bring us paperwork? That was a no right there.
That is unbelievable, isn't it? I'm so glad this book says, be sure you have your pen and your license with you because they will ask for it. Sometimes your Social Security card, sometimes.
Or your driver's license.
Yeah, definitely your driver's license.
And may hire you on the spot.
Yes, and that it often happens when you're dropping by. They'll say, oh, you're here. I'll talk to you for a minute. They happen to like you and they say, you're doing paperwork right now.
Right, because they hire you on the spot because the fact you've dressed up and come in makes a huge impression in this work world today.
If they're not prepared, I'd always tell them, think scout. What you got in your purse? You got a Kleenex in case your nose runs? I mean, I just think Girl Scout leader. I want you to be prepared, and I want you to be prepared with a pair of shoes in your car in case they ask you to run down the nursing home hall. You're hired. In case you're a housekeeper, get that mask. So
and we did that sometime. We actually hired on the spot sometimes. So, but if they weren't raised that way, it's really important that we as coaches help them see these things that to us are obvious, but it's not if nobody's ever shared that with you.
That's a really good point because, I mean, these people are on the fly often, and we get them off the fly for a second, and they're not even used to, well, I'm lucky to, find water where I'm going next. So you're exactly right. There's a basic. Are you carrying a pen? Do you have a little notebook in case they ask you to write stuff down? Do you have a phone number? If you don't have a phone, do you have access to a phone number that they can use through a friend or whatever? So she's saying preparedness. Yes, just review with them what could happen during the interview and what might you need. That's excellent. And she's right. How many executives show up without a pen? I bet that'd be a funny study.
You know, one of the things in Jobs for Life that with the going backward to the interview process and practicing, rehearsing that, it seems like at one of the Job for Life, we had a role reversal where the person that is being interviewed is asking the questions from the interviewer's perspective.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of value in that too, because they'll start to look through a different set of eyes at their
Definitely.
situation.
So perspective taking, getting them to get into another person's head is excellent, especially if you're coming out of crisis. You're not used to, you don't even have the energy, right, to try to get in someone else's. You're doing pretty well getting your own. So perspective taking is excellent. And sometimes they can't even think of a question because it's been so long since they've had experienced authority or experienced any kind of control like that. So I said, "Whoa, I don't know what to ask. Let me think about this." So that's what we're going to do next. Page 38, 39 is be ready for employers' favorite questions. I'm going to add a few to them, but this is a great list here. Page 38 and 39. I want you to put a star by number 11. So tell me about a time which you had a conflict with another person. That, I would have to say that's probably number one favorite employer question. It tells them a whole lot about your perspective of it, your coping. It can tell them everything about how you're going to adjust to the work team you're joining. So I would star that one. I don't see too many ask about what are your short-term goals, what are your long-term goals. They used to be really common. I don't see that so much anymore. I would ask some of these extra ones. I would ask, this is a common one. Do you bring problems or solutions to the workplace? And give me an example. Pretty hard, but that's a popular one. Another very popular one is, how do you disagree with a supervisor? That's a great one to rehearse, isn't it? Because maybe you can help them pull out an example, whether it's from a job or family or wherever they've had a disagreement with someone above them. Rate your integrity, 1 to 10. What creates good morale in a work culture? That's a popular one. Do they know enough about how to contribute positive energy? That's a test of that. So you can think of others, but kind of think about the employer today in this COVID mess and how calm do they want somebody? And how respectful of rules and following, every protocol and learning new training from screens to, gloves to
I think it's important too for us to note that some of our clients have been discriminated against.
Yes.
And have been treated poorly in the workplace.
Yes.
And we need to give them an opportunity to share on that too.
Yes.
I actually saw an employee being mistreated. A client I was working with, I went to pick her up from work one day, and the way that it happened made me it opened my eyes. So I think we need to listen to them too and get a sense of
in fact, I've got a candidate right now, an applicant who's temping, bless her heart. I said, way to go, you're working. Awesome. You can always get a job when you have a job, much better. And she said, yes, but where I work, they make fun of my education. They make fun of what I'm looking for in a job. And there's a freeze, so I'll never be hired here. So look at that environment. She's in an abusive environment. She's making money, but look at the negative input. So great that she's working, but are they destroying her confidence? Are they knocking down the value of her education? Are they going to help her with a reference? I don't know if I trust them. So you're exactly right. And that would be a really good one to rehearse, is the story of justice and of equal treatment, and of, if they ask something about, have you ever been discriminated in the workplace, or have you ever been harassed or whatever, that might be a very, very current question. Very good one to rehearse so they can repeat it and memorize it tactfully, and how they are accountable, and how they're going to handle it next time, because, you know, all of us, it'll happen again. So very good example.
I do want to pop in real quick. We are at 1 o'clock, a little after 1. So if anyone needs to go, then you're welcome to do that. But Justine, if you have a few things you'd like to wrap up with.
Sure.
Since we're on Zoom, we certainly have the flexibility for anybody to stay as long as you guys are comfortable with. So, but I do want to let you know if you guys do need to go, then feel free.
Shoot, I timed this and I only had like 30 minutes. I must be speaking too slowly. I'll just go over the last one, which was follow-up techniques. I
just want to say so much good information. We really, really appreciate it.
Okay. I do want to remind you on page 41 is the questions by the applicant that are excellent. So don't forget those, to review those. On 5, it was just follow-up techniques. And those would be ways that they can stand out. Whether it's a handwritten thank you letter, whether it's an email, all of them are comfortable with email, but I do recommend something different. A phone call, you can glean information from a phone call. I had one case where she thanked the lady profusely for the job offer, declined it. The lady remembered that and recommended her for another job. So touching base once a week if you really want that job, by phone or by dropping by. And staying current on the status of that company. So their employment, you know, might go all over, and they might have the March status, and now we're in June. And so staying current on that company about jobs, hiring patterns, et cetera, would be probably pretty helpful for follow-up techniques. Also getting their friends to recommend them. Their friends have jobs, get them busy recommending their friends. And then reskilling. Conrad was so helpful to me. I had a lady that said, I can't get a job now. My children are home. I can't work now. I remember Conrad saying something about a phlebotomy training course online. So she actually registered for it. And so she wanted to be productive while she was home and wasn't able to do a full-time employment job. So I was pretty impressed that she remembered that. Conrad must have reviewed it or suggested it, or at least had it somewhere listed, and she remembered that. So that was pretty neat. Anyone share some cases that would be really helpful to the rest of the group, or some more helpful ideas about today's scene and what's been good for you guys working with them? Anything you remember or stands out, or was an unusual case, or
I have something. This is Mary.
Hi, Mary.
I was just thinking, that somebody that I'm working with, so she was interested in getting a job at GERS. And then I realized that my daughter had a really good friend that's worked there for several years. And so I texted her and she said, I'll give her name to the HR manager. So she did, and she got contacted right away. And then in the meantime, from when she decided she wanted to get a job there, then we started hearing information, you know, about COVID in grocery stores.
Yep.
Which is really scary. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so she wasn't going to respond to the email. And then I started thinking, well, you know, they may have a position where you're more separated from people, you know, like in the bakery or in the back somewhere, or when you could make a contact, do a good interview, and when COVID's, just tell them, I'm not ready to do it now, but I'd like to do it in the future when we're out of this pandemic. You know, you can make a contact. Exactly. And that's something that I hadn't thought of before, you know, in terms of following through on it. Anyways, I mean, making contacts, you know, means so much.
Networking.
Yeah, so that was just a thought.
I have a really good case of one of my candidates. She, very, very aggressive job searcher. She's awesome to work with. I love people that are just aggressive. She's very aggressive, was calling every day, applying everywhere. And she kind of hit a plateau and she said, I'm going to go volunteer at the car park. I said, way to go. Volunteering, networking. So she met a guy at the car park where she was volunteering who said, I'd love to interview you for my fast food restaurant. He hired 2 other people because she didn't have fast food experience. But then she had the confidence to go to a hotel in person, applied, and got the job the same day. So that was networking.
Oh, that's great.
What did that feed her? That fed her confidence. That fed her, she had an interview with the guy. The guy saw her at the fast food place. He happened to have some other candidates who had fast food experience. She understood that she got pushed out because of that. But she went and got hired the next day at a more appropriate
Confidence,
job.
so important.
It's from volunteering. And so we can encourage these people. You're not doing anything? How about let's brainstorm some volunteering ideas. You, above all people, are going to be compassionate. And if they've got time, they're usually overwhelmed by life. But if they've got time.
Well, and then you can put your whatever you're doing as a volunteer on your resume.
Yeah, and your supervisor? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that you did it for no money. So that's work ethic. Yeah, good example. Anyone else have some good resourceful examples of what their folks have done?
First, I think that the information that you gave us is amazing. Thank you for that. I'll be using that, some of those tips in my intake. But I was curious what you had to say about the reverse incentives, because I have a lot of clients who are currently unemployed and receiving that additional, stimulus money or, unemployment money, $600, I think, a week, which is actually more than what they would have been making if they were working full time for many of them. So what do we say to that?
Well, the potential is they can make more in the long run, right? If they get their feet in the door of a job and with promotions and with increases and with, that's the gold at the end of the rainbow. But we have a lot of people that make more money not working, don't we? So then you also have to talk about how's your pride? How do you feel about yourself? I mean, would you like to get up and go? That I've had one candidate, she gets great money from the government, great money. She doesn't need to work at all. She said, well, my therapist said I really need the structure, the input, the exchange, feeling valuable, and accomplishing something. So maybe we can appeal to their, I'd say, long-term goals and long-term career development. But I agree with you. It's really tough to argue it, especially if they make too much, it'll throw off their income, so they can't, sorry, employer, I can't take that 35 hours. I have to stick to 20. Well, but I want you 35. You're great candidate. Well, I can't take it. Very complicated. Anybody else have some good input on that? That's a very difficult situation.
Well, I actually like what y'all just said too about the volunteering opportunity, because that's unpaid, yet it gives them some structure and something to do with their time. So I like that.
Yeah, and references and good camaraderie. They get fed there because they're giving. That's what we learn is the point of life. We get fed if we give. So they get energy. They get self-esteem. So
right now, childcare is an issue for people trying to get work too, isn't it? I mean, it may seem like they're just trying to stay home and not work, but you don't have a place to take your child, and most daycare centers have not reopened. Some are going to close permanently. So that's going to be an ongoing problem, I think,
yeah. And the financial weighing again, like Tasha said, are they going to weigh putting 3 kids in, making $10 an hour?
Right.
Was it really smart? Or should you be with your kids? And, so very difficult. Just having brainstorming about, well, what else could you do if you kept your kids? Could you do an in-home thing? Could you do something, what do you call those, representational things online where you represent a company. And I mean, could you do something else and meet both needs? But sometimes you have to go right into counseling and say, how do you feel about yourself right now when you're not working?
Of course, if you work with children, you are working too. So
yeah,
You are.
there's that too, isn't there?
But the other thing I was going to add to that, if you're just getting stimulus money because maybe you had a job, I mean, I don't think you can get that if you haven't worked.
Right.
So if I'm not, what happens when that dries up? And then what does that look like when you need a job then? And you haven't been trying?
Yeah.
Will you lose a good job you really want
Uh-huh.
because you haven't? I mean, I think it has to be very individual to the client you have, taking in what Julie said and Tasha, and you guys know them. And so I don't think a one answer fits all here.
No.
Like Justine's saying, you really have to look at that particular person. But I think all these are great ideas that you've thrown out to help them maybe push beyond just taking the money now and enjoying it. Because yeah, I know in the hair salon I go to, I said, well, a lot of my employees earn more money when I couldn't have my salon open than they are now.
I know, see?
Isn't that sad? Our system sometimes is really that way.
Yeah, that's right. So the risk, you can also talk about the risk of the gaps, long-term earnings, right? How gaps might impact your long-term capability of earnings or references or applying to jobs or higher level jobs. So again, going back to that long-term, what do you want for the long term? Where do you see yourself when you're 50, when you're 65? What are you doing? What kind of lifestyle do you want? So just reality checks, I guess, is what we're talking about. But you're exactly right. Every person is so unique. Anybody else have some good pearls? These are all wonderful. Anybody
I have
else
a question. Sorry.
Yes.
I have a question. I want to be respectful of time, but again, I'm new to get back in the workforce and thinking about this. And you were saying earlier about keeping off, you know, I can see a lot of these people bouncing with jobs, having short-term jobs, and you want to fill that one-page resume. I get that, leaving that off, but what happens if they're asked to fill out an application where they're asked to list all the jobs they've had? Don't they by law have to list everything they've had? And how does that pair up with a resume when you leave things off? I don't know what experiences they have.
Well, resume, you're definitely freer to include or not include whatever you want. But apps, they're going to probably tell you the last 5 years, every job, whatever. They might have room for 3 or whatever. The last 10 years. So you're exactly right. Legally, they have to put everything on there. And you know, that's another thing is all my applicants are applying online. Like Conrad said, they live on Indeed. I don't know what they're putting on their apps. That's another thing I would love to see. How are they answering some of those questions? And is it the best for them or whatever? But and they probably differ, grocery store to dollar store to truck driving. But you're exactly right. If it says, please include every job in the last 5 years, you got to do that. You got to put the bad and the good. You got to put if you're fired. Yep. Resume, not so much. It's your document. It's your creation. It's your composition. They can ask you, where were you between this job, that job? You got to answer. But applications, yes, they are legal documents, and that employer can look up every single one. And I wish I knew what, I don't know what my applicants are putting on their online apps, but they do them so quickly. They'll tell me, oh, I just applied in 5 minutes. I just applied for 10 more jobs online. So they can't be too detailed unless they just, fill in the years, and it's just rote. I don't know.
It's not detailed. This is PM. It's not detailed at all.
Oh.
Yep. years ago, from what I remember, is it had to be, you had to have something from the people that you applied to, and it's nothing like that anymore. By the way, I'm sorry I'm late. I thought I was right on time. The wrong time.
No problem. Do you find from your applicants that they need some basic training on time of work and kind of work ethic issues? Like just kind of a review of what being on time means and how being equipped means and respect on the job, et cetera? Do you find that you need to review some of the basics? Don't know. I just wondered.
I've just started
okay.
doing this, and so it's been either the person didn't respond, or one, I did help, and very productive person anyway, just kind of needed, you know, some guidance and support. And now I've got one right now that just has so much drama in her life that you try to have a conversation with her on the phone, and she ends up, there's a lot of background noise, and her family's a mess, and so she can't even, I can't even keep her on the phone long enough to get anywhere, and there's always a different drama going on. So I talked to Conrad yesterday, and I'm gonna try to set up a time with her to go meet for coffee. So it's a one-on-one and gets her out of whatever is going on in the house. So I did notice today she wanted to be friends on Facebook, which I declined that. I don't know her, and you know what I mean? Is that being rude?
I would never friend a client on Facebook unless you have a relationship with them outside of
Okay. I declined. I thought, I don't know what she's doing, you know, so okay, good. I won't feel guilty about that.
Yeah, it sounds like that particular client is overwhelmed right now by too many distractions, kids, people, lifestyle, maybe meals, maybe everything, and so it's hard to focus. I think your coffee idea is excellent if you can get her to go. I had one lady, I begged for a phone conversation because I can learn so much more if I talk to them first before we work on a resume. I almost require it, but she was so evasive, and her 3 kids were, you know, I can't do it. I got 3 kids. I can't do a phone conversation.
I'll say that I have accepted friend requests from clients, very few. It's happened. I've one that is deaf, partially deaf, and so it was a good way for us to communicate on Messenger. And there've been just a few more, and you can block them if you need to, but sometimes it can help to reveal a little more of the situation if you're trying to find more clarity. But it's a risk, and I don't know that I would always recommend it. Tasha, have you ever accepted any friend requests from clients?
No.
And again, I'm not sure, I'm not blanket recommendation on that at all.
Well, you know, I actually had a former client from when I worked at Burrell, and then after I left from there, I had been gone for, you know, a year or two. She found me on Facebook, and then she asked me to be her friend, and I went ahead and accepted it then because I thought it was appropriate since she no longer was my client. But I don't know, it's kind of sticky because you're trying to give them insight to your personal life too. I don't know. Probably should steer clear from it if at all possible. And then too, especially with my male clients, I try to be careful with that because I've had instances where, you know, even when they see me out in the street, they try to be a little too friendly. Just don't want to cross any of those lines. Yeah. But
I would
then too,
qualify
I would
my,
say I do like to get on Facebook sometimes for my clients that I'm not quite sure about their demeanor. They can present one way in the office and be totally different outside of the office. So I will kind of do a little Facebook search if I'm feeling a little leery about, how they really are.
I will qualify my very strong stance on that. As Love Inc. staff, we're in a different position than maybe you are as volunteers. So you guys can have more of maybe more of a peer relationship or a friendly relationship with clients. Whereas because we are staff, I tend to view that as a boundary that needs to be held. But you guys can take that at your own discretion.
Yeah, and I have never accepted a friend request from a client I am currently working with either. Then, in retrospect, thinking about that, I can't think of a time I would ever.
Well, especially if we're job coaching, you can easily say, we have a professional relationship here other than a volunteer counseling coach, but let's model that. And that's not something you would ask your boss or, so I would say, let's stick with the professionalism we're practicing and keep those healthy boundaries, because this is what we're going to practice as soon as you get that job.
And then on top of me being a service coordinator, they might feel that that's another way for them to get in touch with me to request things, and I really do. I'm not on Facebook very often anyway, but I prefer that to be my personal respectful time. I don't want to be, case managing via Facebook.
Yeah, that is difficult today. I even worried about home phone numbers. I said, well, will we be taken advantage of? Are they going to call? I've got one that's got such high anxiety. I probably get 3 to 7 calls a day. So I had to deal with that. Because for a while I was probably used as her anxiety outlet. So I had to handle that one. But you do worry about anything personal because boundaries of your job, boundaries of your volunteer work, and then it doesn't help them. Yeah, it doesn't help them if you become their pal. So looks like she wants to say something, or she's just walking. Any other good input we can get from Tasha, because you intake and you exit them. Anything you notice when they're going out that we could probably add or go over?
No, I think you guys are wonderful. I enjoy reading the notes that you guys give. It gives us some insight as to how hard they're really trying to work, to get a job. I've had clients that, present to me as if, I urgently need a job and I'm really out here working and trying. And then we read the reports back and it's like they haven't submitted any applications or they didn't follow up on this or that. And, so we kind of get a sense of how hard they're working, and it helps us to know how hard to work for them too.
Another question I had as I'm working with these folks is I'd kind of like to know their literacy level. One, I kept saying, I had her do homework. I gave her 4 things to do homework, and I'm thinking, I'm not sure she might have dyslexia, she might have some reading, disability, but I worry that I don't know their literacy level. In fact, I asked her because she commented that she does have a learning disability, and she wasn't specific. But so that would be something helpful for us to know if we know any kind of level without offending them.
That is something that we can include in the referral to you guys. We ask during their intake, what is their highest level of education? So that could be an indicator.
Mm-hmm.
And we also ask if they have any special training or skills, licensures, things like that.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Conrad, are the people that you're asking me to just make preliminary contact, they haven't gone through the intake process, right?
That depends. So some of them have,
Okay.
and some of them haven't.
Okay.
And we're still fine tuning that process. So typically what happens is we have Megan, who's our clearinghouse coordinator. She fields all of the incoming requests that we receive. Some of those she'll look at, and they may be a little bit more just kind of we call it a single service, where basically they just need help finding a job with an application or something of that nature. And so if it's, I would say, one of those easier cases, simpler cases, then we'll give you the information that we have. What my experience with that is that those are about 50-50. Some of those are truly simple cases, and some of those, there's a lot underneath that, and we end up having to refer them for an intake anyway.
Okay.
If they've gone through an intake process, then that'll come from one of the service coordinators, and those are the referrals that I'll send you that have the service coordinator's information in it, along with a little bit of a background of the individual. So it really just depends. But for any of you that are receiving, especially career coaching referrals from me, you can always let me know that you found out some information that made this, really, it makes it a lot more complex than what we thought it was. Because honestly, most of the time, I only have the information that you see. I can track down more information, but initially all I get is what I send to you. So you have everything that I'm aware of. So sometimes you guys can find more information out. Mary Clark, I don't know if she's still on the call or not. She contacted somebody and found out that there was a whole lot more under the surface. And so we were able to take that and run with it and put some more staff and time into her situation. So feel free to do that. It's certainly not a failure. It's not a problem at all on our end if you come up with some things that seem like they're going to be barriers that you don't feel like you're equipped to handle.
So they don't all have this, do they? No.
Unfortunately not, especially while we're working remotely. We try to get those to clients, but I'd say maybe about 25% of our clients actually get the coaching manuals. We try to get them to them, but it's not always possible.
Well, I end up just taking a picture of the page I want them to use. It's not a problem. I just wondered if they've been through training or anything at all before they get that, or if they come here cold. I didn't know. Anyone else have good input on an interesting case or unusual?
I have to leave, but thank you so much, Justine. You've done a wonderful job today.
Sure, I'm sorry I went long. I timed myself, and of course it's different. I didn't have an audience then.
Must have been worth it, right?
Well, I'm so sorry. I wanted much more discussion time.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye. You're welcome anytime.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Same for me. Thank you. Very enlightening. Appreciate it.
Nice to meet you all.